Using audio loops in your tracks can sometimes feel a little bit like cheating, and if you just use the loop as is without changing it, as well as some potential weird copyright black hole issues, it can also just feel a little bit boring. That said, loops can be a really fantastic font of inspiration and a great compositional tool as well. And so in this video, I want to show you 3 different ways that you can use audio loops in your productions without it feeling like cheating, stealing, or boring, and also by making those loops feel a little bit more like your own. So here I've got a little something that I've put together just by using 3 different audio loops. It sounds like this. Now, of course, this sounds pretty cool, but what I want to do is show you a few ways that we can make these loops sound a little bit more unique and like our own. First up, by using audio editing techniques. Now, when I'm talking about audio editing in this context, I'm mainly talking about rearranging the audio in these different clips to create a different or new and unique pattern. For instance, let's apply some audio editing techniques to this drum loop to make it a little bit different. So here's what our drum loop sounds like. Pretty cool, pretty groovy, but we can use some audio editing techniques to change the pattern of it. For instance, I might want to remove this second kick drum right here and replace it with an element from later on, maybe this hi-hat. So all I can do is just select this hi-hat area, press Command or Control and C to copy this area, and Command or Control and V to paste that. And so now we've replaced that second kick drum with a hi-hat. And we can kind of continue this idea to create something that's a little bit more unique and interesting. So I might want to move this kick drum here, so I could just select this, click and drag, and now I've moved that kick drum at the start of this second bar to just being on the offbeat, but we need to replace it with something. So let's get this hi-hat here, select that area and press Command or Control and D to duplicate that selection. Let's now duplicate this snare here at the end of the second bar. So select that area, press Command or Control and D to duplicate that. And now let's repeat this kind of first pattern that we've created here in this first bar by selecting that whole range, Command or Control and C, pasting it here at bar 3. But let's vary it up slightly by maybe grabbing this hi-hat here in the middle, Command and C, and Command and V to paste that here at the end. And then let's vary up the final bar here by maybe again duplicating this snare. But let's maybe just make it a little bit faster so we can zoom in, and then let's have it be doubled again in the 16th notes here right at the end. So let's take a listen to how that sounds. Cool, so now let's apply this same technique to the other loops in our session, but introduce 2 more ways of editing, repitching and reversing. For this, let's go to the percussion loop. So first thing I could do is just simply select this entire loop by double clicking and then pitch it up maybe a few semitones. Already it sounds a little bit different. Let's now apply some of that same audio editing that we did to the drum loop originally. So I might select this area here, copy this, paste this here. I might select this area here, duplicate that. And then maybe just before this final little hit here, I want to have a bit of like a sweep into this sound. So what I can do is select this sound here, Command or Control and C to copy that and paste it just before it. And then I can reverse this audio just by selecting it and pressing the R key on my keyboard. And now we have kind of a reverse sound going into that percussion sound. Let's do the same thing here just before bar 4, except let's do it with this particular sound. Let's duplicate this with Command or Control and D, and then press the R key here to reverse that going into the start of bar 4. And then I might also apply some repitching to just some specific notes. For instance, this hit here, I might want to repitch this, so I can just select this area, right click, and select split, or use the key command Command and E or Control and E if you're on Windows. And now that sound has been separated from the rest of the clip, and so I can apply some repitching individually. So I could pitch this down a little bit, and then I might apply some repitching to this last section here. So again, select that, Command or Control and E, and then let's repitch this up a little bit more. And so now we have a bit of a different sounding percussion loop. And together with our drum loop, sounding pretty cool. Now, once we've done our audio editing, you'll notice that all these clips that we had, which were originally just one long clip, are now a few different little clips. We can now change these into one long clip again, just by selecting the whole range, right-clicking, and clicking on consolidate, or using the keyboard shortcut, which is Command or Control and J. And that will turn our audio edited clip now into a single clip that we can work with just like we would any other audio clip inside of Ableton Live. Let's do that again for the percussion loop here and look at our second way of kind of making audio loops our own, and that is by warping. For this, let's take a look at the keys loop. Which already sounds pretty cool on its own, but let's do some stuff to it to make it a little bit more unique and ours. So as well as using all the different audio editing techniques that I showed before, we can also retime our audio clips to make them play back shorter or longer, or even just retime certain segments to make it sounding a little bit different. That's what I want to do here with this keys clip. To start with, I want to make it a little bit longer. So what I can do is select this whole clip here. Let's just zoom out, hold down my Shift key, and move my cursor to the top right of this clip. You'll see where it turns into this square bracket with an arrow. As I'm holding down my Shift key, I can just click and drag to the right, and it will stretch out this clip. And so now I've made it double the length, but also stretched out the audio inside the clip to be 2 times as slow. Once we've done that, we can actually affect how this stretching sounds by adjusting the warping algorithm of the audio clip. Let's double click on the clip, come over to the left, and here we can see this warping section. The first drop-down menu allows us to select the different warping algorithm or warping mode that's used to kind of stretch out this sound. By default, it'll probably be set to something like beats, which is what you just heard before. But we have different warping modes here as well: tones, texture, repitch, complex, and complex pro. Let's try out some of the different warp modes here, like tones, and have a listen to how it sounds. Maybe let's try texture. And you'll also notice that as I change between different warp modes, we get some different parameters of that particular warp mode that we can adjust. So here I might adjust the grain size and the flux parameters of this texture warp mode. That's pretty cool, but let's now take a look at how we can combine this warping and stretching idea and concept with some of the different techniques we looked at before. So we can of course apply some audio editing to this loop as well. For instance, I might zoom in and we could potentially duplicate this sound here, maybe duplicate this bit, and then maybe here what I can do for this sound is split this with Command or Control and E, and then stretch this out so that I can extend the length of the sound in this particular audio clip. And then just because I can, let's split off the end of this 4th bar here by selecting bar 5, pressing Command or Control and E, and then let's reverse this last little segment with the R key on our keyboard. Now let's take a listen to how that sounds. Now, there's of course a lot more that you can do with audio warping, but even just used in this simple way, it's a great way to add more interest and uniqueness to audio loops and any other audio that you're working with. By the way, if you want to learn more about how warping works and audio editing and all these different kinds of things, as well as the audio effects that I'm about to show you, I actually have an online course that takes you through the fundamentals of how you can create your very own music from scratch using Ableton Live. You'll find more information in the links down below, or you can head to courses.matttinklermusic.com to find out more. Now, the third way that we can make audio loops our own is by using audio effects, which are a fantastic way to really change how a loop can sound. So let's go ahead and just delete this second 4 bars here of this keys loop, and let's focus in on just working on this keys loop and really altering its sound by using audio effects. So if I come over to my browser and to the audio effects section in the library, we can see all the different audio effects that come with our edition of Ableton Live. Of course, you can use third-party plugins and stuff like that as well for this, but let's just stick with the stock plugins inside of Ableton Live. Let's go ahead and add some of these audio effects to our keys loop to really change the sound of it. Let's start with something like a delay. Select this and simply click and drag it onto the keys loop track to add it, and then it'll show up down in the bottom. Already sounds pretty cool and different. Let's alter some of the parameters of the delay here to make it sound a little bit more interesting. Let's maybe adjust this filter, turn down the feedback, leave the delay time as is, but just reduce the dry wet. Now let's maybe add something like a reverb and then just play around with some of the parameters. And then we could also do some other weird distortions to the signal. For instance, I might want to grab a redux and let's put that before the delay by just clicking and dragging it before the delay. And let's maybe also try out the auto shift device, put that after the redux, turn off the quantizer, and then let's just play around with the pitch and formant controls here. And then turn down the dry wet so we can blend that in as a sound. And then once we have all these different audio effects, much like how we kind of consolidated those different audio clips before, we can actually kind of bake in the audio effects into an audio clip by simply freezing and flattening the track. To do that, all I have to do is right click on the track header and click on freeze and flatten track. And now we can see that this track no longer has the audio effect on it. Instead, we've now got a new audio clip that has all those audio effects printed into the file. And what's cool about this is now I can do all of those same audio editing and warping techniques that I showed previously on the now affected file. So hopefully that gave you some ideas of how you can use audio loops in your own tracks, but still make them feel like your own and make it feel a little bit more interesting. If you have any questions or further thoughts, make sure to leave a comment down below, like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you're new. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you all in the next video.